Hey, all right. So now we've gotten map and we've gotten filter out of the way. Reduce, however, is gonna be the hardest to understand, but I really think it works off of the same principles as the last two. So we'll just keep building off of that. So with reduce, however, it can actually, so the way it works is it builds up to one single value. All of the other ones return some mutated form of an array. This one uses what's called an accumulator to build up to some final returned value. Now, the uh, dot reduce takes in four arguments. Remember before it was just E, I, and R, or the element, the index, and the array. In this case, the first thing is not the element. It is what's called the accumulator. So you'd pass in the accumulator and then the element. So this one normally has two. You can put up to four, but like all the other ones where I just put in one, which was the E, we just have to put in the accumulator followed by the E for this one. So let's put together another set of numbers. So this one, we will just keep it short and sweet. So we'll have 1, uh, 3, 5, and 6, and a -2. So for this one, we're going to write it the same way. So let's call this one, because accumulator is going to build up to something. So let's build it up to the sum. I want to add all of these things together. So let's write let sum. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to write numbers dot reduce. And reduce, like all of the others, we want to write the syntax correct before we do anything. So I'll put my callback in there. Now, I could put in ACC, E, I, and R, or the accumulator, the element, the index, and the array, which can be named whatever you want. In this case, I want to call it the accumulator, the running total, because it's not the sum until the very end. If I take 1 and I add if I take 1 and I add 3 to it, I have 4. But that's not the total sum yet. And then I have 4 here. I take 5 and I add that to it. I've got 9, but it's not the sum yet. So I've got 9 and then I take that 6 and I've got 15. And then it's still the running total. It's not the sum yet. So I have that 15 if I've done my math correct there. And then I'm going to add that -2 on. So I'll have 13 as my final answer. And that's what will be returned. Now, just like all the others, the returns are super important. The return for the map says, hey, and whatever you had in the 0th index before, this is what I want in the 0th index. And then for what I want in the first index, replace it with this thing. Now, with filter, it was return a true or a false. Keep it with a true, delete it with a false. With this, whatever I return becomes the running total. So again, I probably need two things in here. So I need the running total, what it's what I need to add to essentially some place that I will keep putting information. And then I also want to have each of the numbers. So for each num in numbers. And real quick, I'm going to backspace this guy to make it so it's easier to read. This is one whole item, one whole piece. The reduce method will take in a second thing. It takes in what you want the running total to start at. Because when I say, oh, add one on to what? Add one on to 0. So now we start it. So now on the first iteration, I can add 1 onto 0 and I'll get 1. Then I can add 3 onto 1 and I'll get 4. And I can keep adding them on. But 1 needs somewhere to be added to. So I'll start it at 0. Now I'm going to open this guy up because it'll make it a lot easier to not mess up any syntax. Inside here, like I said, whatever you return becomes the new running total. So in this case, I'm starting at 0. Running total is 0. So if I return 0 plus my current number, and my current number is going to be 1, then I'll just have my running total be 1. But we already know that 0 is what my running total started at. So why don't I just replace it with running total? So this is 0 plus 1 gets returned, and that's 1. So now when this one's looked at for the next iteration, so I'll add 0 and 1. I'll return that, which the total of that is 1. So now running total is 1. So when I look at it inside here, it will be 1 plus 3. I'll add that together, I'll get 4. So 4 becomes the new running total. So 4 plus 5 is 9. So I take that 9 and I put it into running total. And I continue that process. So hopefully, if we console.log our sum, we should see 13, exactly like we were thinking before. Now, reduce definitely is the most brain intensive of the bunch. So let's do one more real quick, and we'll call this one letters. So we have a message that was sent over, and it was sent over as an array. So we don't know what it says, and well, I mean, yeah, you're going to be able to read it. But let me write this super cryptic message that no one else can read unless we were to run a reduce on it. We're writing too much in that one. Okay. Here's our cryptic message that we want to merge together using the reduce. We can slowly pack it together. We can add the H to the E, the L to the E, the L to the HEL, the O to the HELL, the space to the HELLO, and we can keep doing that until we've concatenated everything together. So take a second and see if you can write a reduce. Remember, you do want this to start somewhere, and I'll give you the hint. For this one, you're going to want it to start at the empty string. This last one at 0, because that 0 is the base for adding stuff. And when you have no words yet and you're going to start adding words to somewhere where there's no words, start with the no word character, which is just the empty string like that. All right, take a second, pause me, see if you can get it done. Okay, let's see what we should do for this. So let's save our information somewhere. So we're going to say let word, or let's call it sentence. Let sentence be equal to letters dot reduce. What we're going to do is we're going to write out the syntax first. We just don't want to mess it up. So first thing it takes in is a callback. The second thing is where we want our accumulator to start. We want it to start empty. So inside here, we're going to need to put our accumulator and also our individual element. So our accumulator, I would call this guy unfinished word. And then the second thing in there is a letter. Now let's return this guy down and let's do some logic in here to get it to finish. So again, the return will return what the next iteration of the accumulator should be. So what should unfinished word be the next time around? Well, if we're starting at the blank spot, we really want since unfinished word in the beginning will start as the blank, we're going to say unfinished word plus letter. So you can just add like you do with numbers, but it will just combine them together. It's called concatenation. So we're going to add this guy, the blank, this guy is starting as the blank. That's what we've told it. So blank plus H, well, that's H. So now it's going to be H plus the next round E. So H plus E is HE. So HE shows up here. Then we have HE plus L. All right, so pass that in. And we continue that process for a while. So now if we were to console.log our sentence, let's see what we got. Hello world. We've finally decrypted our very cryptic message. So that's how reduce works. It is one of the more complicated ones, but as you can see, it's not that difficult to structure as long as you remember to first put in your callback function and then the place you're going to want your running total, your unfinished word, whatever your accumulator should be to start as. In the next video, we're going to talk about find, which is actually a really important one that I think gets glossed over all the time, but you're going to use it in almost every single project that you have, especially when we start doing databases and user authentication. So I'll see you in the next video. Talk to you then. Bye.